Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is the March edition of the ASAE Young Professionals Drinks and Discover program. This is our third or fourth program. We've covered a host of topics that are relevant to, I think, not just young professionals, but any professional at any level of the career development arc that's looking for a way to get connected with this community, and map out ways to get to where they want to go in the future, how they hit the goals that they've defined for themselves, professional development wise. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about CAE preparedness. I have with me Mark Beebe, who's the Senior Director, Strategic Research, Public Imperatives, and Corporate Development at IEEE. I have Mary Beth Denike, who's the Director of Awards Activities at IEEE. We have Elena Gerstmann, who's Deputy of Executive Operations at the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. We have Christina McCoy, who's an account executive at AMP Association Management. And we have Melissa Swartz, who's a volunteer engagement manager at ASAE. I would be remiss if I went through this without introducing myself. I am Paul Leahy. I am the Associate Director of Membership and Component Relations at the American Immigration Lawyers Association. That's it about me, because this is a broadcast about the 5 individuals I have with me. So today, before we get into it, I kind of want to just hit on very briefly what we are not going to talk about versus what we will talk about. So what we're not going to talk about is sort of the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty of, okay, how do I get my CAE in terms of deadlines, applications, steps in the process. For that, I would really encourage anybody watching this to go to the ASAE website. That's asaecenter.org. I hope that you've been there before and you're familiar. If not, go there. Under the programs tab, you'll see CAE certification. And so there are 6 steps to attaining your CAE. You need to determine your eligibility. You need to apply for the exam. You need to prepare for the exam. And then you need to take the exam, obviously, get recognized. And then once you get it, you'll have to keep your CAE current. So for any information on any of those steps, I highly encourage you again to go to the ASAE website at asaecenter.org. It's under programs, CAE certification. And so those are the steps. They have all the information about what are the eligibility requirements. They have upcoming exam dates and application deadlines. They've got study resources, practice tests, that kind of thing. So go there. What we will be talking about today are things like, oh, when is the right time to consider getting my CAE? How do I define my goals and set up a study plan that's successful for me? I'm going to ask the CAEs with me what surprised them the most about preparing, and then what kind of value has it delivered to their professional and, in a lot of ways, personal life. So let's start with the beginning and think about, okay, when is the right time to consider CAE? I'm going to kick this off to Melissa. Melissa, if you could give us a quick introduction, who you are, what you do, what you're drinking, and then maybe talk a little bit about when the right time to consider the CAE was for you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Swartz. I am the Volunteer Engagement Manager at ASAE, as Paul said. I am drinking a glass of red wine here this evening. I'm coming off of a 4-day weekend, so I'm still on vacation. There may have been a few beers consumed this weekend, so I figured I would just end it on a classy note with a glass of wine. As far as when is the right time to consider the CAE, I've had some colleagues ask me, should I get my master's degree? Should I go for my CAE? I think a lot of it has to do with what your long-term professional goals are. I started off my career in a very small association, so I was very lucky in that I was able to get a lot of experience wearing a lot of different hats. I know that a lot of you are being asked to do a lot of things with your associations with little resources, and I think that that's really important in coming up with that experience and kind of understanding what all goes into running an association. I ended up going for my master's in public administration. I thought it was a little more broad-based. I wasn't sure where my career was going to go exactly. I was in my late 20s. And then I learned about the CAE and I thought, oh, perfect timing. All of my courses from my master's actually apply towards my CAE. So I calculated exactly when I needed to know or when I needed to go for my certification based on the 3 years that my coursework was applicable. So just kind of, that's something that I would advise everybody, is just to take into account where you see your career going for the long term. Association management is a unique specialty, but that's not to say that there aren't other courses or things available to you. But I think it's valuable, also could be transferable to other career paths as well. I'll hand it off to the next person.
Yeah, that's great. So your story of coming from a smaller association. Yeah, no, I was just thinking your story about coming from a small association and getting your start there reminds me of somebody else on this panel that I know, and Christina McCoy. Christina, why don't you do it? So I got a little out of order and actually probably should have had you all introduce yourself before we got into it. We'll just be rolling introductions throughout the program. Christina, maybe you could just do an introduction, tell us what you're drinking, and then jump in and share your story of when was the right time that you considered your studies.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. Christina McCoy here. I am an account exec with AMP Association Management, and I am drinking a cranberry vodka. I don't know if you can see it, but I have our Twitter handle on my thing of wine. It says @ASAEYP. So if you're tweeting during the session today, be sure to use that handle. I also came from a small association. About a year and a half ago, I was with the International Association of Industrial Accidents Boards and Commissions. It was a 501c3. And I knew that I had kind of worked myself into a role that I'd either take my boss's job or needed to look for another job. And it was ready for a change for me. And so I had an opportunity to really consider, what did I want to do next? And a lot of my colleagues in ASAE I'm a volunteer within the ASAE community. A lot of the other volunteers had their CAEs and were talking about their experience in earning it, and kind of decided I'd just give it a shot. I had no idea how many hours I had. So I did a really short calculation, and I found that of the 100 hours you need, I actually had 80 of them already. And so I kind of just went for the last 20. The biggest decision for me was really when to take it. So as you think through your personal experience, think about a timing that is important for you. So on a personal note, at the time I decided to decided to invest in the CAE and apply for the exam, I was actually 8 months pregnant and was about to go on maternity leave, knowing that I would be also looking for new jobs. So I thought, well, what's a better time to study than while I'm on maternity leave, right? So that was my plan. I took those 3 months to invest in all the resources and materials and education I needed. And then it just so turned out that by investing my time in learning the CAE, I was actually offered a job with my current employer while I was on mat leave. I then took that job, left my old one, worked part-time, and then took the exam like a month later. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is there's no perfect time to invest in yourself. You make that time when you think is important. So I could have easily waited another year and put that off. But for me, I knew it was critical with a potential new job emerging in the short-term future. And that really did elevate my role in the job I do have now, being able to earn that immediately on the job. So that was the reason why I decided to take it on the early side. And there's a little fun fact for you quick, which I'll leave you with is, I believe I'm probably one of the younger ones on this panel. Of the current CAEs that are age 35 or younger, actually, let me take a step back. There's only about 4,500 professionals that have the CAE now. And last week I was at the commission meeting, and they shared with me that of those 4,500, 3% are currently age 35 or younger. So if you really want to set yourself apart and be young in that, you will be in a very, very small group, which is really great. So cheers to those.
Cheers to them. I'm not even going to try to do the math on that one, but 3% of 4,500 is not a lot. So definitely for the people, the young professionals listening to this call, like, don't put it off. anytime is the right time, as Christina shared with you, and definitely get on that website and find those resources. So before I open it up to hear from some of the other panelists, particularly about when was the right time for them to consider, I know, Elena, you had a story that you want to share. You had some insight into this topic, so I wanted to throw it to you first for an introduction, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the panel.
Okay, I'm Elena Gersman. I work for the ASAE, which are the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and I work closely on strategy and board operations and corporate communications and the like. I am drinking grape juice in a cup that is probably backwards with the camera, but it's an E for Elena. And then I decided I should dress it up a bit. So I saw a candy cane on the counter, and I have to tell you, it's not a good addition to my drink. It's like bubble gum flavor. So every time I drink it, I smell it. But I'm committed to this drink, and I'm committed to this virtual drinks. So it will be in my glass for a cup for the rest of the time. You know, Paul, I don't remember exactly what I said the last time we talked. I mean, what I do think about when the right time to take it is when you think that you want to stay with associations. So you want to be promoted within your association, and or your next job will be with an association. That's the time to say, you know what, I want to learn a little bit more about associations. So I'll actually give an example. My wife is also a CAE. She's a meeting planner. So she first got her CMP, which is the certification for meeting planners, because she didn't know what she wanted to do next. But once she realized, you know what, I want to be a meeting planner, I want to do an event stuff, but I want to stay within associations, whether I stay with my current employer or not, then she went for her CAE. And I think that that's, you know, if you're not sure you want to be an association person, then maybe you want to take, as Melissa said, an MBA or mini MBA or CPA if you're an accountant. But once you're committed, and you should commit to associations because it's a great industry to work in, as I see it.
That's what I remember you saying. No, that's
Okay.
great. So what I'm hearing now is when you're ready to invest in yourself, you're ready to commit to being an association management or association executive, the CA is the right time for you. Mark, Mary Beth, did you have anything you wanted to add personally here before we move to another topic?
Sure. Just in terms of one of the things that Melissa said about why you are working at a young or a small association, I think the advantage this small association gives is that ability to see all the different roles that are happening within an association. And I think that's incredibly important to learning about the CAA and learning about whether or not association management is where you want to head. But that also is incredibly important for studying for the CAE. So being exposed to all the different roles is incredibly helpful, I think, for being able to do well on the exam. So it helps you understand, is this the right kind of job for me? But then once you do that, it can help you figure out what you need to know to pass the exam too.
Great. So for anybody watching live, I know the chat feature is not amazing. So if you have questions that you would like to ask of the presenters, it's okay to email me. It's pleahy, Pleahy, at aila.org. I'll be monitoring my email, and we'll be happy to present our presenters with questions as they come in.
Paul, can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking about what Christina said about 3% of all the CAEs are under the age of 35, which is great for the 3%, but it would be nice if I mean, it's a great exam to take because of the body of knowledge that you learn. So I can't agree with Christina more in terms of, if you're interested, no matter what your age, take a look at that website that Paul said before on the ASAE page, because the sooner you learn this stuff, and some of it's really exciting stuff to learn. Just wanted to add that.
Hi, Paul, Paul, I'd like to add to that as well.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. This is Beth, Director of Awards Activities at IEEE. I'm drinking water, unfortunately, out of my mug. I'm in the office, but later on tonight, I may add a little something special to it in the office. But just to add on to what Elena said, I've been with IEEE for over 20 years. And I made a decision. I definitely wanted to stay with association management. And I heard talk from, my esteemed colleagues, many of whom are on the phone here, about ASAE and the CAE designation. And they had such wonderful things to say about ASAE, the opportunities afforded them by getting their CAE designation, and the connections they made as a result of their involvement with ASAE. So if you're mid-career or even moving past mid-career, I encourage you to pursue the designation as well.
Great.
So, and this is Christina. I just want to add one more thing on top of what everyone else has said, which is, so I brought props to this one. And there's a personal worksheet towards earning your CAE, if anyone can see this. And the reason I bring this up is someone encouraged me to identify the strengths I was bringing to the body of knowledge with the CAE before I started studying. And this isn't a study tip, but it's interesting because I didn't realize how broad the CAE was until I actually went through this. And at first it was a little daunting to recognize the 9 domains are incredibly expansive, especially when I came from a small 501c3, which didn't even deal with things like PACs and some of the things in strategic management and just, we didn't have chapters. I didn't even know what component relations was, to be honest with you. So I encourage you to at least start there and recognize like this process is beneficial just to understand even like what the full association sphere even covers. So that was just something I found really useful. Thanks.
That's great. So I'm over here as a non-TA. I'm listening and I'm taking my little bits of wisdom from each of you. And okay, so now I've decided it's time. I'm ready to commit. I'm ready to work in this sector. I'm going to get my CAE. I don't even know where I start. I guess I should probably start by defining my goals. I'm going to pass it over to Mark. Mark, can you give us a brief introduction? Let us know what you're drinking. And then where do we start? How do we get this thing going?
Sure. So I'm drinking iced tea. And tonight I will add, just like Mary Beth, something a little special, but it'll be more ice because that's about all I ever drink. So as I was thinking about this question, one of the things that struck me is first of all, you want to be strategic and figure out why you want to be a CAE, and that can help drive both how you're going to study and what ways you're doing that. And I further was thinking about this and realized that I didn't actually do any of these things when I got my CAE. My boss said, "Hey, you should do this," and because she's a brilliant person, I said, "Oh, okay, I'll go get a CAE." And so I did that. But by the way, Elena was my boss at the time, so
thanks for the shout out, Mark.
Yeah. So you could study, and I know lots of people who go through cram courses and they pass the exam. And I think that's great. And if they want those 3 little letters after their name, get the information you need to pass the exam. But if your goal is really to continue on in association management, your goal is to really understand the breadth and depth of the association field and all the activities, I think you need to take a longer term approach to what it means to be prepared for the CAE. And as I was mentioning earlier, the idea that trying to get experience in all the different areas of an association can be incredibly helpful for that. And, learning about what those really do rather than how to actually answer the questions on the exam. And I think that's really helpful for making the CAE meaningful, at least it was for me, to really understand what that really means and how do I actually apply this knowledge once I get it. Unfortunately, I've always been really good at taking tests, so I wasn't worried about so much passing a multiple choice exam. But if I wanted to really understand that information, being able to use it on my day-to-day job, then I really had to integrate that knowledge into what I'm doing, the work that I do, and how do I do my day-to-day stuff. I'm fortunate that the job I did at the time, which was primarily research, I got exposed to all the areas of IEEE. So I worked with our publications department. I worked with our standards department. So I got some exposure to all those. But if you don't do that, I think a really important thing to do is to reach out to folks in all the departments within your organization and learn a little bit more about what they do and how they do their job, rather than just trying to understand what the questions are in order to pass the test. By the way, as a data geek, 3% of 4,500 is 135. The 3% of young professionals, I felt obligated to actually answer the math question posed in front of me.
Cheers, you win.
I am a geek.
Cheers to us, Christina.
Yeah. That's right.
So I think that's really great advice. How about the others? Anybody else wanted to add on to what Mark just laid out for us?
I want to again agree with what someone said and what Mark just said. I remember going when I was studying, because I don't have a financial background. I took the organization's 990 or cash flow statement when I was studying for the financial component of the CAE, and I went up and I asked one of my friends up in the finance department to sit with me. So it was really great because I got to learn more about who I was working for as I got to learn about the test. So Mark, just double down on what Mark said for all of the areas. You know, take what you're learning and use it as an opportunity to talk to the expert in your organization.
This sounds like a great opportunity to develop some emotional intelligence along with association intelligence. So here's a question for you guys, or you can jump in with other thoughts that you might have. What can I draw from my current on-the-job experience to actually help me prepare for the test? Is there anything that I've done on a regular basis that might actually help give me a leg up on this test? Lots of heads shaking, but not.
I mean, whatever you do every day is going to be in one of the domains.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're an expert in that already. And especially if you qualify to take the exam, you know so much of it. And what you have to do is fill in the gaps of what you don't know and learn it from another perspective. And that's what reading the books and taking the classes will let you do. So you're already coming into it with so much knowledge.
And I would add to that any one of our roles within an organization doesn't stand on its own. It's not work we do in isolation. And so the work that you're doing, you may just have to think about it from a different perspective. What are the goals of your organization? How does what you're doing fit in with those broader goals of an association? And how does that tie into all the other areas, the other domains that the CAE exam covers? So you may be doing some things that you don't even realize are connected to other activities that you need to know about. And so, which is why as you study, you need to look at what everybody else is doing, but also think about how your role fits in with that. And that really helps you integrate the stuff you're learning with what you already know. And I think that makes it much easier to learn the material.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. And I'll add to that and say that one way to know if you've really been learning the information well is if you're working with a study group or a mentor or someone through that process, actually teach them the material and use it in conversation and talk about it rather than, just taking it in and reading it and, digesting it. If you can talk about it and actually, teach it to others, that's a way to, really, start talking about the experiences you currently have in your role. So the specific question was, what can I take from my current, job experience to the role? So, at the time when I applied, from a small staff, you kind of do a little bit of everything, which thanks to Mark's comment, you get exposed to a lot. So I was actually running the association's books. I was in charge of all the budgeting and all of my financials. So when I read look at the books here. When I read the nonprofit finance statements book, I kind of laughed because I was like, why am I even reading this? Like, I know what this is. I do this every day. So, to draw upon that as well.
Just to piggyback on what Christina was saying, I think when I was preparing for it, there was parts of it where I was like, oh, well, I do know my stuff. I am confident. And it helped to kind of, rebuild that confidence in what I do daily. And then also come across that nonprofit financial statement book and be like, oh no, newfound respect for my friends in finance because I have no interest in doing that on a daily basis. So I think it's a lot of just understanding where other people are coming from too. It builds, as I think Paul said earlier, that emotional intelligence also comes along with it. That understanding that, yes, I play an important role in my association, but my colleagues do as well. And we need to support each other to get to fulfill the larger goal of serving our membership.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so I've decided that I'm gonna take this test, and I've got my goals defined, how I want to go about this, how I want to use it. What do I do? What's my study plan? How do I set myself up for success? Christina, why don't you get us started on this?
Okay.
What do I need to do? So
look back to your goals, and if you've decided that really understanding the body of knowledge is, a critical piece to, your CAE journey, which, by the way, all of you are already on a CAE journey because you're sitting in this Drinks to Discover. So just a little fun fact there. So even if you don't know that you're on a journey, you just joined one. So anyways, if you want to really understand the material, I recommend working backwards. So this is a little bit tactile, but it really helps me in kind of putting together the picture of the journey I took in studying. So I knew the exam I was going to take was in May, and I filed my application in February. And so I knew I had asked a lot of people for advice, and I really encourage a lot of you to ask around people that you respect and people that you understand kind of their experience and what they can bring to your perspective, and ask them what they did and draw upon that for yourself. So most people I talked to said they studied somewhere between 3 to 6 months. And I knew I didn't have 6 months to study, but I was going to put 6 months worth of studying into 3 months. And so what that meant for me was, and I'm absolutely serious when I say this, I actually decided I kind of preach on this thing called the 4 burners theory, which is how you spend the energy and time in your life between your career, your family, your friends, and your health. So between those 4 things, I turned off all the time I was spending on my health and my friends, and my family was just high enough to say I had it on. And that's because I literally just had a baby, so I had to at least be present for that. Right? Cheers to all the new moms out there. Anyways, but I really did put 95% of my energy seriously into studying. So what did that mean? That meant before I went to work, I would read for a half hour. That meant when I was at work on my lunch breaks, I would be reading materials or kind of working through the Collaborate community on ASAE. When I got home for work, I would spend 2 hours reading and researching, and I had weekly check-ins with my mentor. So we were on Hangouts, Google Hangouts, and FaceTime together. And then on the weekends, I took practice exams. So I literally took the 4-hour practice exam like 4 times to evaluate my learning through the process. And then when it wasn't a 4-hour exam, I was taking, check-in hour exams throughout the week. So I spent a lot of time studying because, again, for my assessment, I knew I was coming with very limited knowledge in the C6 experience. And so I felt like I needed to play a lot of catch up. And it really did work itself to my favor because I was able to, I was literally living and breathing the CAE every day. I gained this confidence, and my mentor suggested that I pretty much just say, like, I know this material. I'm literally breathing it. Now I just need to execute on it and, fill in the right box on a test, right? And that's exactly what happened. And I would share this with all of you. As you're kind of reviewing the material, you really do know this content. Like, you don't need to read a book to learn what's ethical. Like, yes, maybe some granular HR practices and acts and things, maybe things you want to brush up on. But at the end of the day, you really do know this material, especially if you've been in associations for a few years, which I believe is one of the requirements anyways. So go in with that confidence. It took me a little bit to gain that confidence, but once I did, my whole outtake and output on the practice exam experience completely changed once I envisioned myself earning that CAE.
Can I just add to that that the journey you were describing made me think of what I was doing, and one of the things that was important to me is I had the support of my boss as I was doing this. And the degree to which you can get that, and that may require selling this to your boss and say, by doing this, I become a more valuable employee to you and to our organization. I think that really benefits you in terms of your preparation for the exam, both in terms of perhaps getting some time during your normal work day, if you can, to do some of this work, to perhaps make connections with others in your organization so you can meet with them and talk with them about their roles within the organization, how that fits into association management, and really recognizing the value of the CAE and just having someone who is going to be evaluating you at the end of the year, how important this is, and this may be a major goal of yours professionally and could benefit your association. And so getting that support, I think, can really benefit you both in terms of the direct study for how you're doing and then how you can actually implement this knowledge on your job.
Yeah, and Mark, let me say too, and I'd be curious, Melissa or others, if you had this shared experience. I was the first one in my association who earned their CAE at the time. And my boss didn't have it and didn't know what it was. And so it was I had that support in the beginning, and it was also a large reason why I left. Because that wasn't a part of the culture, and I wanted it to be in the career I was, taking steps towards. But by practicing it and by teaching it, I was able to actually, kind of like sell that piece of that development that was so critical to myself. And one little fun fact for you is, so because I'm not in the DC area, I took the exam in a remote location. It was actually at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and in a testing center. And so luckily for me, I had a quiet room all to myself. But the thing I did not expect or anticipate was, so this exam was proctored to me by students. And they do this often, like they have tests all the time. They're having people take the SAT, the ACT, like all the things you'd expect, right? They looked at me and they go, what's the CAE? Like they had no idea. And I was so caught off guard to explain to them not only what the CAE was, but what associations were. Mm-hmm. So it was just a really great moment to practice that in my personal life, especially since my family also has no idea what I do, as I'm sure we all can resonate with.
Joy and love, right? So how about Mary Beth, Melissa, Elena, is there anything you wanted to add to study planning? Like, I don't know, are the books worth the investment? Are there specific courses people should take? What are some of your tips for people as they're looking at their study plan?
Sure, I'll jump in here, Paul. I also had the support of my manager in pursuing my CAE and was also encouraged to take one of the study prep courses offered by MSAE. One of my concerns with that is, again, time. I was concerned because looking at the schedule, I wasn't going to be able to make a lot of the webinars. But the good thing was I was able to play catch up by listening to the recordings of the webinar. And also, as Christina said, you really have to take a step back and look at what your study plan is going to be. There were many weekends where I just devoted all my time to studying, taking the practice exams, taking the quizzes, and it was really quite beneficial to do that. Even though it was painful to do it, it was very helpful.
Yeah, for me, full disclosure, Mary Beth, you not only had the support of your supervisor, but you had the support of your staff as well, because I was reporting to Mary Beth at the time, and there were 3 people from our department who went through the prep course and took the exam together. So that was helpful too. I found the I think it was the Michigan ASAE prep course that I think Elena actually directed us to. I found that really helpful because it paced me, and it also kept me on schedule, and it made sure that I didn't, bypass that financial section that I really didn't want to focus on. And you tend to be drawn to the things that you are strong in to begin with. which is hard to force yourself to focus on the things that you're weak in. I know people who have taken the ASAE, I think there's a weekend cram session. It's a couple of days in DC, and they've had success with that. It all depends on your own, scheduling and other commitments and stuff like that. Working for IEEE at the time when I took the exam, I was fortunate that they supported us in purchasing all of the prep materials. My organization now has a smaller professional development budget, and they're very supportive. But I think there's more resource sharing that goes on rather than, just supplying everybody with the books. So my advice to everybody out there would be to find someone in your organization or in ASAE or at another local organization that might be willing to even share books with you or anything like that. Because I do think that it is valuable. And if this is an area that you are passionate about, like I geeked out. I liked reading this stuff anyway. And thinking, oh, I can actually apply that in my job. And I felt myself improving in my career path, even along my prep for the CAE.
I mean, I actually think I was just listening, I think there's 5 ways to go about it. I'll recommend 4 of them. The first way is absolutely do nothing except show up for the exam. I have yet to meet anybody who's been successful that way. But the other 4 ways, I think you can go at it alone, and you can pick up the books and read it and schedule yourself and just work hard and try and get it. And I know a couple people who've done it that way. And then another way that's very popular is working with a CAE group, which I think, Christina, you mentioned that, which is you're not doing it, you're not paying anybody, but you're getting together with other folks going through the CAE prep with you. Then you have the 3-day immersion class that ASAE has, and then like the 4, 5, 6 month class that I know Michigan offers and other places offer too. So I think those are pretty much the 5 ways to go about studying. But I don't know, did anybody think of a 6th way?
Pay somebody else to do it? No. No, I did not say that.
And he's not even drinking alcohol.
That we know of.
Yeah.
Not alcohol.
That is all fantastic information. And I apologize if there's a lot of background noise coming from my line. My toddler is currently upstairs treating the hardwoods like a trampoline. So again, apologies in advance. And I think that's just a good example of we're all dealing with stuff in our personal life, but we're trying to channel our energy into getting this CAE designation and being better association professionals. So I've decided I'm going to do it. I've got my goals set. I got my study plan set, and I'm taking the test. I want to know from you all, because again, I'm a newbie. What surprised you the most while you were preparing for this test? I'm going to start with Mary Beth. Can you chime in and let us know a little bit of what jumped out at you? What surprised you when you were preparing?
Well, again, I was told this at the start of the journey, but I was still surprised at the amount of time I needed to devote to prepare for the exam on the weekends. I literally did block my weekends, reading, taking the practice quizzes, like Christina said, taking the 4-hour exam a number of times. And I was also a bit surprised too that I did as well as I did studying on my own and really not getting together with a study group on a consistent basis. While Melissa mentioned there were a few of us taking the course and we would bounce things off each other, I did most of the studying on my own, and I was pleasantly surprised how well I did doing it on my own. So you can do it on your own if you don't have the benefit of getting together with a study group.
Yeah, that's great advice. So people out there, don't be intimidated or upset or worried if you can't do a group. We have living proof right here that you can do well on the test without getting with a study group. Others, what surprised you about taking the test, about preparing?
I'll go.
What about you, Mark?
Okay.
Or Christina.
Christina, you go ahead and then I'll go afterwards.
Okay. It must be a delay on my side. So one thing that surprised me was how I would personally like act during the 4 hours. So the reason I took all those practice exams is because I hadn't taken a 4-hour exam that was multiple choice in years. Like, I mean, when's the last time we take tests like this at our job? Like, I don't know about any of you, but it's very infrequently, if at all, since college. So I needed to put myself in that environment. And when I did that, some of the themes that emerged were how I actually took the 200 questions. I found that I would speed through the first half, and then I'd kind of slow down in the middle, and then I'd realize I didn't have enough time, so I'd speed through the end. So one thing that surprised me was how my personal test taking skills could be manipulated to, be thoughtful in how I responded. So I was able to practice, okay, like this is the timing that tells me that I'm in the right, pathway of giving each question, the right time. I found that I constantly was like playing with my hair. So I literally tied it up the second time. I'm like, I don't need to mess with this. and then I also practiced taking the exam literally in like the outfit I would be wearing at the exam, which I know is a little bit to the T, but this is a type A person. And like, I was like, okay, why am I wearing like a dress suit to the CA? This is stupid. I'm taking it in a practice exam place at a university. Everyone's going to be wearing like sweatpants and Uggs. So I like took the exam in jeans and a t-shirt, and I was comfortable. Like, so this is a silly way of saying you want to be comfortable at the exam. And one of the things I did to also be comfortable was I literally, here's, show and tell, is I literally like stood up during the exam, like stretched. Like 4 hours is a long time. Just don't feel like it's going to be weird. People are looking at you. Just do what works for you.
Yeah, so I have a one for preparing for the exam and one for when I took the exam. In preparing for the exam, I guess about 2/3 of the way, I did study for maybe 3 to 4 months. And maybe 2/3 of the way of preparing for the exam, I realized that I really had an epiphany about how to answer questions on the exam. And that is, there's sort of a model association that the exam is thinking about when the questions are right. You may work for an association where you're the only employee. You may work for an association like IEEE, where we have, 1,300 employees. Those are not the model that most of the questions are based on. So you have to sort of think, a sort of a mid-sized association with a number of employees, but not 1,000 employees. And you have to think about how they're asking the question, and you have to take that perspective. And I didn't realize that until long after I started studying for the exam and started taking practice tests. And the answers that I think of may not have naturally fit the answer that they were looking for, because IEEE is not like that model association that they're thinking about. So that was the one thing. The other thing, in terms of actually taking the exam, I came out of there having no clue how well I did. It's one of the things that was the most frustrating to me. Other exams I've taken, I did a lot of school, way too much school. I've taken a lot of exams in my life. Usually I knew, I did really well on that, or God, I really blew that. When I came out of the CAE, I could have missed every single question, or I could have gotten every single question right. I just didn't know. I could narrow it down to 2, but is that the right one or that the right one? It was a really disconcerting feeling leaving that exam and not knowing how well I did. And I passed, so obviously I did fine. So just a clue to you when you leave the exam, don't get upset if you don't think you did great. You probably did just fine.
Yeah, that's great advice. Melissa, Elena, what do you think? Is there anything that surprised you while you were preparing?
I think what surprised me the most, as I mentioned before, was how much I actually knew. Don't second guess your experience. But as Mark mentioned earlier, also don't necessarily answer the questions for your own organization. Because I think that, as I mentioned, I started my career in a very, very small association. I jumped to IEEE, which is a huge association. I would say neither one of those are in the ideal model realm. And so, kind of taking a step back and being like, okay, in a perfect world, this is how things should operate, not necessarily how I might react given knowing other circumstances or other context to a situation, but like how you should react.
Great. So we've gotten to this point where we know we're going to do it. We've got our goals. We've got our study plan. We've taken the test. We passed. Yay, we're in CAE. We go back to work. What's life like after the CAE? Does it add a lot of value? Does it change your perspective? Elena, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it changed your life after the after the CAE?
Sure. One thing to add based on the last topic is if you happen to fail, take it again. And I know it's no fun to take it again, but do it. It's going to be worthwhile, and I'll tell you why it's worthwhile. Even if you hate exams, I didn't forget about it. It didn't surprise me, but I forgot how much I hate taking exams. But you just do it, and then you're done, and then you don't ever have to take the exam ever again. So I've outlined a few things that I think about life after CAE. The first thing is the most important, which is the level of confidence I got. In terms of just feeling like I learned all this stuff. I mean, Christina has all the books, right? She showed it to you. It means I must know the stuff in those books if I earn the CAE. The exam tests something. It's a reliable and valid test. I feel really good about this. So that made me feel more confident, made me feel smarter, made me feel more ready to go into any of the conversations. If we talk about finances, I no longer feared going into those financial conversations because I knew I had enough base knowledge to make me a player. So I'll never be a CFO, but I'm good enough. So that was the biggest thing, the confidence. The other thing that I like noticing now that I have the CAE, and I've had it for over 10 years, is when I read a job description, when they say CAE, to me, it means that they probably value the same things I value, which is people who understand associations and what we do. The third thing is a resume. It's a nice 3 letters after your name, and that means a lot. The fourth thing is if you're interested in pursuing more volunteerism within ASAE, it helps. I've been on the board of directors with ASAE. I'm on the fellow selection with ASAE, and one of the questions on the fellow selection is, have you earned your CAE? And if not, why not? So it's not that you have to have it to be a fellow of ASAE, but it's going to go a long way. And if you don't, you have some defending to do, explaining to do on that. So that's really great. The fifth thing is, and I just have 2 more after this, a total of 7, is when I hire people, I look for CAEs, not only because of the knowledge, but because of the commitment. Because in order to get the CAE, you have to be committed to associations, and you will have had to know how to study and take the time to invest in yourself. And those are the types of employees I want to hire. The 6th is that because of the recertification, you have to keep in the know. You have to go to the conferences. You have to volunteer. You have to do other things that fulfill your certification hours, which means not only are you smart because you just completed the exam, but you're going to always be ahead of the curve, and you're going to build that network because of that. And the last is back to the confidence. But not only do you have the confidence that you know it, you know where to find information if you don't know it. So we never know everything. So even after the day after you get that great note saying you passed the CAE, you might be hit with a question that you don't know, but you will know the collaborate, you'll know the books, you'll know people, you'll know so much, and you have a CAE community that will always be with you that you can just post a question on, and you'll know how to get the answer. So that's life after CAE in the CAE world. That's what I have to add to that.
Dude, we could make a commercial for getting your CAE based on that testimony. That's amazing. So I want to hear from some of the other panelists. Maybe you can share a little bit about how your life has changed after the CAE. What do you think? Let's Mary Beth, yeah.
Well, Elena really hit a lot of the major points. The feeling you get after receiving that notification that you passed the exam, just your confidence level goes way up, and you just are are feeling great for those few days after it. I got my CAE about almost a year and a half ago, and I'm looking forward to exploring volunteer opportunities with ASAE, because I think it's just a really important part of continuing the journey. So that's something I'm looking forward to going forward.
Fantastic. Others? Mark, Melissa, Christina?
I think for me, it not only boosted my own confidence, as Elena and Mary Beth said before, but other people are confident in my skills too, which also makes me more confident. Like, I can walk into the room and people will actually turn to me and ask for my opinion and respect my opinion, because I have educated myself and I have the experience to be able to share. And to be honest, it opens up a lot of doors. We had an executive at IEEE who left to go work for another organization, and I emailed him as soon as I got my CAE. We'd been keeping in touch, and I was like, hey, thank you for supporting me when you were here. I just wanted to share that I got my CAE. And, within a couple months later, he was like, hey, I'm working on a job description. Would you be interested? And that's where I am now. So it does open up new doors. It builds your network. There's opportunities at the ASAE annual meeting to network with other CAEs, or, working with other YPs, people who, probably a lot of you who are attending this webinar, come seek us out at the annual meeting or other ASAE events. We absolutely want to share our experiences and support you in your journey, or, bat around other ideas that you might have.
Great. And to that point, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I would just add that the sort of obvious one, and that is, I know more stuff and I'm better able to do my job. I studied all that stuff. I learned it. I can do more now. So, and that's really important.
Hashtag, yeah. I know.
And speaking of knowing more stuff,
you're gonna say something?
Yeah, speaking of knowing more stuff, I will just comment that I was able to take some of my knowledge, specifically in the last show and tell law handbook, the heaviest of them all, and by far my nemesis in this process. I was able to take knowledge of that and apply it like outside of associations, talking about like antitrust and things like that. Like, I didn't realize that it actually had value outside of my 9 to 5 in the world I can't even describe to my family. So I mean, yes, it's a lot of emotional growing and professional growing, but I mean, this is also just really good knowledge to have as a professional. So I've used it. It's only been, I'm on the short side here too, only having it for a year, but I feel like I'm kind of a walking billboard for the CAE these days. I'm just so honored to be a part of, the CAE culture and the small number of people who do have the CAE, especially, I'm the chair of the Young Professionals Committee, and we talk about it often, about how it's not just association executives, as in the ED or the CEO that should get the CAE, but those that want to be in a senior level of leadership within associations to get that full body of knowledge and, kind of speak the association speak. So,
I just want to add to that. I think, Christina, that's an excellent point. I think it's, I'm glad that it has the name CAE, but it really isn't just for executives. Even if you're not sure what you want to do later, it just gives you that body of knowledge. Another thing, I will give a short story on what I did when I did find out I passed. The executive director at the time had a CAE, and he was our first one that had a CAE. He had recently joined us, so I took my business card and I wrote in pen CAE next to my name, and I went into his office and I handed him my business card. That's how I let him know.
That's fine.
That was life after the CAE within a few months.
That's fantastic. Can't wait for the day where I can do the same thing.
Well,
so before we break, I want to kick it back to our fearless Drinks and Discover leader, Jada Ali, who wanted to make a couple of quick announcements before we break.
Okay. Thank you all. I was just in the background looking at the control room, and I was listening. And I'm not a CAE yet, but I'm definitely inspired by what I've heard on this panel. I'm sure Paul can agree. I wanted to thank you all, Christina, Elena, Mark, Mary Beth, and Melissa. When we reached out to them to join this panel, everyone graciously accepted. It was really wonderful to have you on this panel. And we hope that everyone that's viewing right now, you'll join us on our next Drinks and Discover, which will be taking place sometime in July before ASAE Annual. We will be having a teaser for our Chicago Taste Of. So if you're a YP and you've been to other annuals, you know what the Taste Of is like. I don't know if Paul or Christina, you want to talk a little bit more of what Taste Of is, but we're trying to do a teaser with those speakers. So this is a little promotion for that up and coming Drinks and Discover.
Yeah, and if I know it seems really early, it's only the end of March, but now is the time to start thinking about annual in Chicago. And as Majeda mentioned, the Young Professionals Committee will be planning a series of Taste of Chicago events where young professionals can dine with and learn from some of the like top leaders in the association management field on any number of topics like career development and making a name for yourself and really just being the best association professional or executive that you can be. For those who are on this call, thank you for joining. What we'll do is as soon as we're ready, we'll send the recording from the call out to the community and collaborate. We will include some of the information on the kind of nuts and bolts, what we didn't cover from ASAE, the like deadlines and all that stuff. And then we will, because they are so gracious, we will include the contact information from our presenters who have signaled to me, I don't know if they change their minds, that they're willing to take questions, after the fact from people who are too shy to ask now or who are watching this after the fact to follow up with any questions that you might have for the presenters. So having said that, I really appreciate all of you spending the last hour with me, drinking, talking CAE. You have all convinced me that I will be hopefully sitting for the test in December and walking the stage, knock on wood with a little bit of luck, next August. So
let's drink to that. Cheers. My drink's gone.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Great. Thank you all.
Thanks, Majeda. Bye, all.